Greetings, everybody. Robyn here from Courage is the Cure. Today, we're going to be joined by Bronwyn Hendry on Relentless. She is a whistleblower, and I think this is going to be a ripper of a show. Alrighty, I'll see you in a jiffy. All right, greetings, everybody. Like I said, welcome to episode 122 of Relentless. It is the 29th of October, 2025. Today, we're going to be joined by whistleblower Bronwyn Hendry, and we're going to be talking about something called a recusal. I hadn't heard that word before until a few weeks ago. And as I said in the beginning of the show, I'm sure this show is going to be a ripper. Bronwyn is a mother of 6 boys, lo and behold, a grandmother, and also the proud mum of Lord Sausage. I'll let Bronwyn explain that. Hello, Bronwyn. How are you?
Hi, Robyn. Nice to see you. How are you? This is Lord Sausage. He's a miniature Dassound and he's a 5-star Klingon. So maybe the opportunity to do a podcast in the absence of Lord Sausage, aka his actual name is Wilbur, but he'll answer to anything that is available. So yeah, he may be joining us on occasions when I cannot get him off my lap. So that's Lord Sausage.
Fantastic. We were just having a great conversation about all the wonderful names of animals that we all are surrounded with. You know, I often talk about small humans, but the small animals in our life are just as much as a blessing as well, which is fantastic. Bronwyn, we have a lot to get through today, and your story is much bigger than just what we're going to be talking about today. That's for sure. Hello, everybody in the comments. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, but today we are going to be covering something which you went to court a couple of weeks ago on the, when was it? The
9th of
October,
yes.
2025, and that was a recusal. Before we talk about that, I thought I might just screen the share, as you do on many of my shows, because back in November of 2023, 9 News actually spoke to you because you are a former prison guard here in Western Australia, and you do have a court case against 3 former colleagues, and as I said, 9 News did come to speak to you. So we'll just watch this report from the 9 News and let everybody catch up.
Former prison guard Bronwyn Hendry says speaking out has come at a cost.
I guess the impact on my children has been hardest.
Filing her case at the federal court, the mother of 6 claims she suffered relentless sexual harassment while employed at Bunbury Regional Prison last year, including from 3 co-workers named in court documents. How would you describe the culture within Bunbury Regional Prison?
It is hostile among staff, a psychosocial hazard of bullying, harassment and intimidation.
The documents seen by 9 News also outline allegations of bullying and unwanted advances. Bronwyn Hendry claims when she reported it, she felt threatened. 2 animals were left on your doorstep.
The first animal was a decapitated possum and the second was a decapitated puppy.
There are also different claims filed against Department of Justice Deputy Commissioner James August and Bunbury Regional Prison Superintendent Kerry Bishop. They aren't accused of harassment. Bronwyn Hendry claims once she reported it, her superiors took no action. The Department of Justice says it can't comment because the case is before the courts.
It's a hard to believe story. People go to work and expect to be safe. They expect not to be treated like that.
For 12 months, WorkSafe has been investigating claims of inappropriate behaviour by staff here. The prison has been given until January to comply with workplace laws. Bronwyn Hendry quit after 2 years. She's seeking damages and she wants change.
I want to be the last person that has to go through this.
Michael Genovese, 9 News.
So there we go, everybody. As I said, that was from the 29th of November 2023. So that's just coming on to 2 years ago now, Bronwyn. Would you like to talk to people a little bit about that as much as you want to, as much as you can, before we talk about the recusal?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, that was documented well. And, you know, obviously the details behind the action that I've taken. I mean, they released that after I'd been 12 months in the Human Rights Commission. And that was because when you're in the Human Rights Commission, it's a confidential place to be. So you don't often share what's going on in that litigation as such, or pre-litigation. And then you pop out the other side of the Human Rights Commission with the termination, which was, you know, no prospects of resolution. And that is purely because in my situation, the respondent parties didn't attend. So you're there for 12 months encouraging them to resolve the matter. And that could have been as simple as being accountable for actions or talking through some form of, you know, adult interaction where you're like, oh, so how's the department, what are they going to do to change it? I do want to be the last person that's the subject to this. 2 years on, even with an improvement notice and the WorkSafe investigation and all the rest that went on with that, it has not stopped. Parliamentary reports show that it's ongoing at Bunbury Regional Prison, current officers calling it out and contacting, you know, people to make it stop. Nothing's changed. So, and this is very where you'd think the action that you take inadvertently will bring some attention to it, and there'll be changes, dramatic changes and preventions of such. But considering the people that are in my case are still in the workplace, so they're still employed, still senior officers, they're still conducting themselves the way that they probably always have. And I'm one of many girls. So there's another 3 girls currently in the Human Rights Commission coming up behind me for the same perpetrators. So the fact that the Department of Justice have retained their employments and then all these other people have lost their livelihoods and are fighting just to be heard or just to see some accountability, it's quite devastating how a state government operates as such. There's a punishment in the process. So you come forward, you engage in litigation willingly and ethically, very flexible, very willing to sit down and have, you know, a conversation, and then they just come in with defences that are extraordinary. Some women are suffering the same through the commission, which is the nuts and sluts defence. They started that on me in my litigation, is what's called a nuts and sluts defence. And that's where the lawyers come for you, not about the subject matter, not about what happened to you, but they'll dig up whatever they can from historic or whatever to create a narrative in discrediting you. And so, yeah, you would hope from being a whistleblower that there would be some subtle differences and some even potential dramatic changes. But what we're hearing and what we're seeing, people are obviously quite willing to give up their evidence and their situations as they unfold in real time, that nothing has changed at all. And unfortunately, somewhat even gotten worse, because it's now all about covering it up than it is actually remedying the situation.
It's horrifying. horrifying to think, even just, some of the details from the Nine News report there about, a dead possum and dead puppy on your doorstep, because, you are a whistleblower, heaven forbid, and that, as you've said, you want to be the last person that this happens to.
And that's not my only story. Like, there's other people that have also experienced that have touched this case, is that they've also experienced the dead animals as somewhat a threat. But I mean, that's the very least of it. Senior officers sending you emails where if you report sexual harassment, your life will be at risk. That's prima facie evidence that sits before the court. It sits everywhere, wherever you need it to be. And the fact that we're fighting so hard, yet the admissions outweigh anything. So, the admissions from the department even stating that they acknowledge pocket pussies, sex props are being made by officers in these units at the prison. But then using some extraordinary defense or explanation that, in my situation, I touched it, so therefore it wasn't unwelcome. And so they use that a narrative to normalize the fact that senior officers are making sexual props in the form of vaginas, then, encouraging other men to use those sexual props for self-gratification. And that is completely okay. I think those kind of admissions and explanations, the fact that there's enough apologies on my case already to question how can the taxpayer be funding litigation for defences when we've got officers admitting to letters of solicitation and being very sorry that they sent that or gave that to me while I was there. So it's very, very confusing to understand why you go through years of litigation, lots of admissions that say without prejudice. So I can't raise that in court. I can't show that to the litigation insurer and say, I don't understand why I'm here, because they've already made admissions to all of this. But the fact is that stays behind closed doors, and you sit there and you fight extraordinary defenses that you just never think that you should have to be put through, because they've never denied what's happened, and that's for sure. I mean, there's evidence in an IN that even the superintendent admits to those behaviours going on in the prison, and they're very difficult to control. So you sit back and all the women that are subject to the punishment in the process and the sluts and nuts defence that the state model litigants raise to denigrate who you are just because you're a whistleblower is so archaic. I mean, we've recently watched a movie, I think it's called North Country, and the book is based on the class action. And it was 50 years ago in America, where there was an initiation by a woman, a whistleblower, about sexual harassment in the workplace back then. And it is almost identical to the women's stories that are coming out of Bunbury Regional Prison, if not identical. And what she got put through litigation, and then the judges in that case stamped out the nuts and the sluts defence in America. Yet we're in Australia, in WA, and we are still facing the most archaic, unethical actions by litigation by the state government for things they can't deny that's happened because they already have admitted. So it's very unusual.
I attended court with you on the 9th of October with a lovely support group that joined you as well, and other independent media, Edge Radio Australia and Scorpion Media Group. On that particular day, I understand corporate media was invited to attend because, as we can see from Channel 9 2 years ago, corporate media have been interested in your case and have been reporting on it. But on the 9th, as I understand it, corporate media was invited to attend on that day, and they didn't.
I think the explanation was the case is a shit show. They were the exact words from the corporate media on the day. Yes, from the West Australian. The case is a shit show.
And I think just through your brief explanation there, it's certainly not on your part that this case would be a shit show.
Yeah.
But the reason why we all attended with you on the 9th of October this year was for this recusal. And I want to point out to everybody in the audience that you are self-representing. You don't have a team of lawyers behind you. You are there doing this and have been all this time yourself. Would you walk us through why we went to court with you on the 9th and, the details of that matter? Just before you do, the other thing I want to point out to people is that day, given that you are self-representing, when we walked in there, I was surprised to see how many people were on the other side against you, and it was just you and another person behind you in that courtroom. I was astounded, actually, Bronwyn. Sorry to interrupt even before you start, but why were we there on the 9th of October?
And just to touch on that subject of being astounded, all those people on the other side of the room, and that is just some of them. So you've got obviously barristers or counsel at the front, which is the bar table. Then behind them is the instructing lawyers, and then behind them is further, obviously, whatever else the law firms need. And everyone has to recognise, because I think the public just don't understand litigation with the state, is that this is all taxpayer funded. So you have to realise that it's every hour that those lawyers stand there and litigate the matter is coming out of the state budget or some insurance premium that they have paid for to be covered by the Insurance Commission of WA. So someone's getting rorted somewhere. But yeah, so we attended the 9th of October, and that's because I raised, getting past of why I raised a recusal. So probably about a year ago, I raised a judicial complaint, and that was to the Chief Justice, Miss Mortimer, and that was raising concerns around about the conduct of the matter. So I've been before the court for 2 years. No defences were ordered or have been ordered. The opposing parties haven't requested an extension. They haven't engaged in anything that would even void a filing defence, such as a strikeout or anything like that. So there was no first case management hearing. It's just kind of been a roll through of adjournments and technical arguments that have not progressed the matter at all. There was comments made by the judge earlier on in litigation that was actually picked up by the West Australian, where I refused to take an offer of a pro bono lawyer. So I politely declined to the judge that at that stage of litigation, I was willing to self-manage the case. And there's myriad reasons why. For me, someone pays for this. At the end of the day, if I win or lose, someone's paying for those lawyers. If they're pro bono or not, it is a taxpayer's scheme. And besides the fact that potentially under a pro bono scheme, I would get one lawyer who has got a caseload of hundreds of other clients that are paying clients. And so the ability for them to manage my case and its complexities and knowing the ins and outs of it is a big burden for anybody. So I chose because I can and try. I mean, we have the right to represent ourselves. And I'm definitely not a model litigant, so I comply with all court orders and court rules and respect to the court. So I put a judicial complaint in, a bit concerned about that he was, the judge was potentially insisting I get a lawyer, and I was politely declining, and I couldn't quite understand that. That entailed further a referral to a lawyer. He wanted me again to take another referral to get a lawyer. I asked him why, and I said, is there something with my paperwork? Is there something wrong with what I'm doing? And he said, he's not going to comment. So I couldn't even get the transparency of what this push was for this lawyer. And so I ended up having a look at the referral, and in that process was told by an officer of the court that as a self-representing female, that I have no clout, multiple times over and over again, and that the federal court is a game. And I think I was quite astonished that federal court representatives, people that are there to act impartially, were dissuading self-representing litigants and using this, oh, you've got no clout. And the no clout means is that I can't, if they say I win a hearing, I can't claim costs off those people. So there's no deterrence for them to lose, because I don't have $1 million in lawyers' fees that I'm going to also collect on my way out. And that's what it means is no clout. The fact that there was disclosures at the federal court is a game. No one going into litigation and of that level of litigation would ever think that people of the court, employed by the court, are disclosing that this arena is all about a game, where they're seeking justice like anybody else has the right to do. So the outcome of the complaint that I made to Ms. Mortimer was a suggestion that I recuse the judge. And I said back, I don't want to recuse the judge. That's kind of really the last resort. Can we mediate this matter? Can we talk about it? Can we sit down like adults and just see if we can sort out this? What it feels like is there a general dislike for a self-representing litigant? And the same response, your option is a recusal. So I then went on to then contact the barrister for the state and the court, and I asked if any conflicts needed to be disclosed. Conflicts of interest, if there is a close relationship with the barrister and the judge, and anything, but it was broad. So it was, and if there's not, because I'm perceiving there might be, just let me know. No, so they ignored me. So then the next stage, after I'd exhausted all the other avenues, was to raise a recusal. And a recusal means that I have an apprehension that the judge may not deliberate over the matter fairly. And the test is a reasonable person test, or what they call a fair-minded lay observer. Now, I don't know where that person is or how that definition exists. I understand that there's lots of case precedent to explain that, but the judge is not a fair-minded observer, and I'm not either. So it's very hard when you do a recusal that a judge has got to recuse himself under that level, or what that is described as, when he's not a lay-minded observer either. So I raised a recusal, and that was because I had suspicions due to behaviours of the opposing barrister and the judge through a case management hearing. And I had requested many times throughout litigation that the judge please manage the conduct of the matter. And that included opposing parties breaching court orders and are not abiding by court rules. And it was never touched on. He would never really look at it. So, and they would respond, no, they wouldn't disclose anything. And then I thought, I think they have, that I feel that there is something there, intuition-wise, and obviously behaviours associated. So I raised an apprehended bias recusal, and in that you have to file evidence because it's a court of law. And in gathering the evidence, which was not, we'll touch on that later, is that, I had to provide evidence that's proven that they were social media friends and that there was interactions outside of the court case. As such, in some ways.
Sorry to interrupt, but you just so everybody, and if for anybody that's just joined us, you're talking about Judge Jackson and one of the barristers.
Fiona Stanton. She's the barrister for the state of Western Australia. So she is the pretty much the lead defence barrister for the state.
Yep.
Yep. So that was raised. I've never. It's hard when you're a self-representing litigant because you do the research, and I had to go far and wide to get my research. In Australia, we don't, especially in the Commonwealth. There's no judicial commission. There's no judicial commission in WA. So the guidelines are really New South Wales. You've got some overarching recommendations on conduct and things like that, but they're not really enforceable over these judges in the federal court or in WA, full stop, as such. And there's nowhere to go. And once you've already asked them to disclose something that is perceived or that is current, it's right there in front of you. They are social media friends. They interact. That is the fact. And that's above and beyond anything else that was a formative part of the recusal. The concerns that was not expressly addressed early was a part of that recusal application. However, I articulated my argument purely on research and facts. I raised a few international, actually. So the US have quite a few cases associated with financial donations and social media interactions between judges and a barrister that comes before them. Now, for me, as much as he has articulated my application as fantastical, and he has articulated my application as baseless, and used quite a few derogatory terms in regards to the application, as far as I was aware, it was meeting what was appropriate and what was not appropriate in regards to the relationship that was between him and Miss Stanton. And, you write your submissions, you file your affidavits, and then they get the opportunity to respond to that with submissions. And it's quite formulative that, of course, they're going to respond in the way that they do. But at the end of the day, I thought my argument was what it was, which is perceived bias, which is apprehended bias, regardless of it's acceptable in our judicial system or not, with judges being friends with barristers that are coming before them or not. I think it's a subject worth talking about, and there's lots to talk about it. So there's draft guidelines about judges being friends with barristers that come before them and disclosing that as early as you can in the proceedings, and the fact that they didn't. And I based my application on facts. So.
And the friendship between Judge Jackson, it's very sad that his name is Judge Jackson. That's just my opinion, because it's part of my surname. But anyway, the relationship between Fiona Stanton and Judge Jackson spans more than just a couple of weeks or a couple of years, which I think was very important, Bronwyn.
I thought it was really important because, obviously they admitted to going to university together and being in the same class. He admitted to not remembering her name, for example. So, you've got, this kind of hearsay stuff going, I knew who she was, but I didn't know her name. And so therefore, we're expected. And then in the memorandum, obviously, that he sent, which was only weeks before we went to the hearing, not when I was so I filed the application in July, and the disclosures of their connections weren't done until just before the hearing, and the submissions were already in and everything's already done, and there's a few disclosures. So, the fact that, he didn't remember, for example, how often he socialised with her, whether or not he thought that was relevant or significant or not. I don't think it's baseless to accuse as such that from obviously what his disclosures were, what the facts were of social media friendships and obviously a financial donation. It's a bit tricky because you're then going up against an opinion and what meets the level of apprehended bias. And, potentially I catastrophically lost that argument. It's an objective argument. So at any stage, I think when someone is denigrating you in a judgment, to the extent that he did, and I think that's pretty harsh, but that's my opinion, is that perceptions are huge, and that's what it's about. And my application was based on fact. I didn't manipulate the fact to make a point. It was based on fact, case precedent, and conduct of what's expected. I don't think through any of my submissions, yeah, you were there. I guess you heard the argument in person. And then obviously you saw the backlash from the mainstream media, which resulted afterwards.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a little bit of a read through of the West's coverage of this and talk a little bit about Lawley. But the other really important thing that I want the audience to understand is that when you were speaking in court, not only about Judge Jackson and Fiona Stanton's relationship, but the fundraising. Can you talk to us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So when I had a look at Judge Jackson's public profile page, so just the front page of Facebook, what everyone sees when you have a public profile page. So there's obviously a cover photo, you've got a profile picture, and then all you see on Honourable Justice Jackson's profile is then you see a fundraiser that he's endorsed on his page publicly. And the fact that the judicial guidelines actually recommend that no judge should be fundraising for anything, whether or not that is for anything personally, especially. And that is because of situations like these, where if you see that a barrister that is standing before him has made a donation, then that could raise a perception of bias, and it could actually raise a question of concern that potentially that donation was made publicly by a barrister for, alternate reasons. Now, you've got to remember, when you raise a recusal application, and also, he's alleged that I assiduously combed through his Facebook, and that is absolutely untrue. So the fact that I took a screenshot of his profile page, public profile page, and put it into evidence to prove the fact that he was friends with Fiona Stanton, to prove the fact she was interacting with his profile as it was. So she wasn't just his friend, but she was liking his things that he was putting up on his page. And the fact also, I think he makes in his judgment, that I based my argument on the grave or tragic circumstances of his family. Now, when I saw the fundraiser, when you open it, when you see it, you don't see the details of that man's illness. You don't see that, but you do see the donations. And unless you do, and so I didn't even know the details of this. All I knew was what he said, which was that he was raising monies for his brother-in-law. He was encouraging all his friends and public to donate to him. And there was no other details that you could see, but you could see who donated. So the allegations that he's made in his judgment, and further what's been reported on, is so far from the truth of that situation. It's not funny. But as a litigant, I have to prove by fact that I know that a barrister that is standing in front of him has made a donation to his personal interests. And that was the argument that I had in court. Was it purely that there was a financial nexus between the judge and the barrister, and the way that that argument has been, under my opinion, has been completely manipulated to create a scandalous event, is just unfathomable. So I think with the West Australian then came out and obviously reported on the recusal judgment, which, hey, of all the things to report on and all the problems in the world, they decide to scandalise a judgment and invest their time into that.
Well, Bronwyn, when I saw the West Australians, I've just popped up. I'll pop it up again. This is actually a social media post from the West Australian after the 9th. So this was posted on the 25th of October, if I'm not mistaken, on social media from the West Australian newspaper. you know, when I saw that, and also the West Australian article and some other bits and pieces, I thought, isn't that interesting? Because, you know, we can see from those articles that, you know, corporate media reporters had gone along to Judge Jackson and asked for his comment in relation to this recusal. However, they didn't ask you for comment, and that's, you know, of course, one of the very important reasons why you're here tonight, is so that you can have your right of reply.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have thought that ethical reporting would include, you know, making comments, even if they contacted me to make comments. I mean, the fact is that I have the transcript and any submissions that were made to support the argument, then, you know, that is readily available. I'm not afraid. No, I'm transparent. So ask me a question, I'll answer it. The fact that they didn't approach me to even get the other side of the story, and I get in some aspects, you know, a judge's word is gospel. A judge's judgment is gospel, and they don't need to get definitely don't need to get a comment from a self-representing litigant about that, because why would you? If you can scandalize a judgment, and the problem is with the judgment is because it contains such emotive language, because it contains such allegations and derogatory character references. I mean, even the fact that he had to recuse himself, not for the arguments that I raised, but the fact that he subsequently thought I was an asshole, or that my conduct, he could no longer reside over the matter because of the way that I articulated my argument for a recusal. Is just flabbergasting.
Yeah. We might just have a bit of a read through for everybody, and at any point in time, you can stop me, Bronwyn, if you want to have your right of reply. We'll cover 3 items. This is the first one. As I said, it's a social media post from the West Australian. This is where you can see down the bottom where it gives the first part of the description of the video. Perth woman exploits social media to wipe judge from case. She's assiduously combed through the social media presence of not only me, blah, blah, blah. So they're quoting Judge Jackson. Any further comment about this social media post to
well, I think, I mean,
the audience?
I mean, I must say, that's the biggest compliment I've ever received. I'd have to give that to the West Australian. I am a 60% girl, and that is, you know, that's good enough. So assiduous, I thank the West Australian and the judge for identifying that he thought I was assiduous. I'm so far from it, it's not funny. I'm technologically not up to date. So the fact that I combed through someone's social media is really not likely, and definitely not the facts. I mean, the opinion raised in that judgment as it is, when that is not the facts, is disappointing, and that's my opinion. The fact that the West Australian have gone on to said a woman exploits social media. So I was like, oh, I want to Google the word exploit, and it is just horrendous. It's like I tapped into his social media logins and I criminally exploited him or stalked him, and it's just not the facts at all. You know, the evidence behind the case is a screenshot of a public profile that I had to file to prove that my perception and the facts were correct. Yes, they were friends on social media. That is a fact. That is correct. They're engaging with each other's personal posts and things like that. So I have to prove that. So all of the above is absolutely made very colourful, and why wouldn't they? If a judge is going to write a judgment like that, and they could potentially, as a media outlet, and potentially, and this is probably my concern more than anything, is the intent to pervert the character of credibility moving forward for the rest of the case. You know, is the West Australian working the state government in let's bring to people's attention that this woman maybe have really bad conduct, And so therefore, does this woman therefore have really bad conduct in any other allegation she makes in her claim? And that's, for me, as an ulterior motive to why they published something like that. Like it's such a scandalous story, and I do worry about the character perversion that they attempted to do, and that is worrisome for if that's in alignment with what the character perversion that I will have to face by the state in litigation, regardless. So that the West Australian jumped on board with that is just really disappointing, really.
Well, no, I'll just reiterate to the audience there that, you know, the West was invited on the 9th of October to attend the court. So for them not to attend, then, you know, ask the judge for his comment and not yours, and then we see the language, and we will get on to we'll have a read through of the article. People can make of it what they will, but shall I put it that way? So this is the headline from the Western Australian article. I'm going to read through it for everybody. But as I said, Bronwyn, stop me any time if you'd like to have your right of reply there. So we can see the West Australian's headline. They've actually put your name. I did see some other reports which they didn't want to put your name in the headline. They used was it Perth lady or Perth woman or
Perth
something
woman,
like that?
I know. I'm not even in Perth, so you know that's false reporting as it is, isn't it?
So here we go, everybody. This is the West Australian, 25th of October, 2025. Headline reads: Bronwyn Hendry, Perth woman demands judge stand down after uncovering link between lawyer and his ill relative. It's an interesting headline. I don't know if I should say what I think, but it's not accurate.
Correct. It is completely inaccurate. And if that's summarising his judgment, because, you know, obviously the last 10 paragraphs of the judgment, it was my opinion that the gloves came off and he put a boot in, and he had to articulate that in a way to where he was going to recuse himself, but in a way that established a foundation for that, which was to make an allegation that was completely what his opinion was compared to what I believed the argument that I raised was. And it had nothing to do with his ill relative. It was to do with the judge endorsing a fundraiser, promoting a fundraiser. There was a donation from an opposing barrister. That was then perceived as a financial nexus between the two. And it had I don't think I even raised at one point during my submissions anything to do with his ill relative at all. And it is so, but hey, doesn't that make me look like an asshole?
Well, we'll continue on. We'll continue on with the article, everybody. And stop me anytime you like, Bronwyn. So it starts off: a Perth woman has demanded a federal court judge step aside from her case after combing through his social media and finding the defence barrister had donated money to a relative of the judge who was on life support. Bronwyn Hendry applied for Justice Darren Jackson to recuse himself from her legal proceedings, arguing he was in a position of apprehended bias because of an alleged personal association with barrister Fiona Stanton. Ms. Hendry, who is self-represented in the case, told the court she uncovered what she described as a close, ongoing relationship between the judge and Ms. Stanton. quote from yourself: close, ongoing social media connections between the judge and counsel, especially with further familial and professional overlap, create an appearance of a personal relationship beyond normal professional boundaries, she said.
Now that's the fact. That's what I said.
Mhm.
It doesn't.
So
it
they
doesn't.
have read.
Yeah. So they've got the judgment, obviously, and that was my argument, and that is true. I mean, and they're the facts. I didn't argue whether or not it had nothing to do with his ill relative. It had nothing to do with what it has been articulated intentionally to look like, to the extent where I looked at the judgments even today, and I looked at my submissions, and I did notice that words had been taken out of my submissions and put into a paragraph to substantiate some absolutely corroborating outcome that I went, oh, wow, can you do that? And I mean, it's the perfect storm, isn't it? Because, and all I have before me is what I argued in court that day, which was reading my submissions, and at no stage did I even touch on the fact that I took advantage of a tragic situation. It was simply that there was a fundraiser and there was a financial nexus, and the way it has been perverted into some conduct issue that I believe how it's been articulated. And you know what, regardless if I won the argument or not, like, you're in a court, law is complicated. Criticizing a self-representing litigant, saying that her claims are baseless, and any lay observer would also believe they're baseless, and any judge. So he elaborates then to bring in judges. All judges would think Miss Hendry is, rah, rah. And I think it's kind of, they have an obligation as a judge till the end to be impartial. And that is not going out, putting a boot in, not publicizing something that could be scandalized, or further media could pick up on it and then denigrate a character of someone based on that judge's boot on his way out. The fact that he put a boot in on the way out, the fact that, I mean, the judgment's fantastic up until page 90, paragraph 99. Like, you're sitting there going, yeah, well, that's a good argument, and I lost that one. And I kind of always say that because he's recused himself anyway, it's the Stephen Bradbury effect, where, the ice skater that won the Olympics after everyone fell around him, or the accidental recusal. There's no motive. I wasn't there with a motive. I wasn't there with intention. I wasn't there to a predator on this judge's apparent tragic situation. That none of that is true. And the fact that that has been said, and the fact that he's recused himself under that interpretation is, and then it's been picked up by mainstream, who then have added further colour and further scandalism, is extraordinary. And I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but isn't that the perfect argument to start off litigation against a woman that's whistleblowing on the state? Is it let the public know that even a judge thinks that she has got conduct issues, or that she's going to raise fantastical arguments, or, perfect situation for the state government, isn't it? Is because they have already set the basis for what the rest of the case will, or what they want people to know about the case. And I think that's probably where... No, you're right, you go.
Perhaps it helps to muddy waters, if you like, because would it be a fair statement, Bronwyn, to say that your motivation and reason for being in court all of these years is because of sexual harassment and bullying, and not because you want to make a judge, or any judge, in fact, look bad, and spend your time making a judge recuse himself?
I mean, I don't think anyone would do that. I mean, there's no I'm there. I'm only in court because the state government are unable to be open, honest, and transparent about what occurred in the prison and what continues to occur. So the fact that whistleblowers exist, to pure fact that the state can't own what happened, although there's admissions for days about what happened, and there's lots of other victims and lots of other women. And no one wants to be in court. I don't want to be litigating this matter. It is so hard, and it is such a punishment to people that whistleblow. And even, the fact that, that they used, or the intent to use, the sluts and nuts defense. And this goes for all women that are subject to sexual assault, men that are subject to sexual assault and sexual harassment, is that it is the most disgusting form of litigation that can ever happen. And that's because all you wanted is change. All you wanted was to go to work, feel safe, not to be harassed, work in a professional environment and do your job. The fact that that's taken away, the fact that when you try and follow the process, you get told that your life will be at risk and you're a dog if you report. And working in a prison environment, that is a real threat. So when they say that your life will be at risk and that your fellow officer will not have your back when shit goes down in that prison, now this is written by senior officers warning you not to complain, is absolutely disgusting. So it's undeniable. So the fact that, it's just a terrible situation, and you don't go in. I mean, personally, I believe I've been so compliant, and I do everything the best I can, and I'm being super respectful for Justice Jackson. And I actually feel so shit that if he disliked me that much, to that extent, to raise such a allegationary and such an emotive judgment, then be an adult. You kind of you self-disqualify and let's have a chat. Don't, that's just never been my intent. And I've respected him for 2 years. I've been polite, been compliant. There's been no issues. So the fact that it's just highly alarming, that a boot goes in on the way out, and then the public then see, because he's a judge, so therefore he's thy God, as the understanding of the Joe blogs is that, he is who he is. And I do get concerned that, there's this that's come out. I wonder how many other judgments are actually not what happened in the courts. I do get concerned about that we rely on the media to tell us what's going on in these court cases. And I do get concerned that I may not be the only person that has been subject to judgments or decisions or whatever, and you've got no right of recourse. I mean, who do I go to? I mean, I have raised a judicial complaint against him for the emotive language and the allegations and the prima facie evidence that just doesn't match up with the denigration and the language that he used, which then obviously promoted scandalism in the media. So that's gone to the Chief Justice, but there's no outcome. There's no recourse. And the acceptability of that is what it is. And unfortunately, as the what I would say, I was the victim of that, is just kind of unfathomable. And I think there needs to be a really good overview of the Federal Court of Australia, full stop. And there needs to be some form of backstop, like a judicial commission. So there are guidelines at the very least for things like this.
We'll continue on with the article. So they had quoted yourself correctly after reading the judgment. Then goes on to say, Miss Hendry claimed that Miss Stanton and Justice Jackson have financial interests in one another, pointing to a donation Miss Stanton made to a GoFundMe campaign for the judge's brother-in-law, who suffers from Guillain-Barré syndrome. In 2024, my wife's brother was afflicted with a severely disabling medical condition. This is a quote from Judge Jackson, which meant that he could not work. My wife, along with 2 others, organised a GoFundMe fundraiser. I shared the link to the GoFundMe page on my Facebook profile, the judge said in a ruling last week. I was not aware before the applicant's interlocutory application that Ms. Stanton had donated to the GoFundMe campaign. I think we're missing a... she alleged the donation created a conflict. Justice Jackson knew the barrister Fiona Stanton was his long-term acquaintance and friend on Facebook, giving rise to the knowledge that Fiona Stanton was likely to contribute financially to his personal interests. That's a quote from you, apparently. Justice Jackson rejected those claims, describing them as unreal and outlandish. Another quote from Justice Jackson: the proposition that a relationship of this kind would lead a judge to be inclined to favour the case of the client represented by the barrister is unreal, he said. The suggestion of a nefarious or corrupt motivation for these acts is an outlandish one.
So I also just want to correct that. At no stage did I allege anything was nefarious or corrupt. So they are not my words, and I did not allege that. So that was just that's not true. I didn't at all. The corruption is a huge word, and at no stage did I ever say those words or infer corruption. It was simply a perception of bias. I also wish to make comment. I had no idea what the illness of his relative was. You don't see that when you're having when there's a donation page there. You just see that the barrister has donated, and what I could see is that she donated to that cause on his page, and she confirmed that by providing details of that donation. The fact that he didn't know she donated is not my problem. That is him managing his Facebook social media profile. And then when he comes to knowledge of it, which was in July, there was no further disclosures about that until just before the hearing. So the fact that that was explicitly not disclosed, because, you know, if those things were disclosed just with an application, then we sat down and we had a good chat and how these things are managed in this situation, and what the recommendations are. So usually what the recommendations are is that the judge actively unfriends that person on Facebook, actively, you know, privatizes his Facebook or whatever, so the public don't get a perception that potentially there is going to be any bias or favoritism or whatever as such, whether or not subconscious or conscious bias. So the fact that they let it so long, and then it got left, the disclosures got left so long. I don't think Fiona Stanton disclosed that she actually donated to him till the 1st of October, which is 9 days before a hearing. And so, you know, as a litigant, you've got to make an informed decision. And with such late disclosures or the general unwillingness to disclose is a huge part of apprehended bias, because why go to a huge court hearing and a judgment when, if you disclosed early, then I would have withdrawn the application for the recusal and we could have sorted through any conflicts that were perceived. They chose not to do that, not me. So I just kept, you know, the date was set and we proceeded with our argument as it was scheduled. So the fact that resolution wasn't sought against anything is quite unusual, I believe.
We then have going on in the article, the judge confirmed he knew Ms. Stanton from their university days, but described her only as an acquaintance. Quote from Judge Jackson: Ms. Stanton and I have known each other since we attended the University of Western Australia law school at the same time, he said. As best as I can recall, I knew her name during that time. I would describe Miss Stanton as having been an acquaintance during that period. Justice Jackson said Ms. Hendry's application relied heavily on personal details about his family. Miss Henry has assiduously combed through the social media presence of not only me but my wife, he said. Justice Jackson said Miss Hendry's she chose to file affidavits which included screen capture images of my family.
So that's also untrue. So I filed an affidavit with a screenshot of their profile pages. They were public profile pages. So everyone in the public can see a photograph of his wife and his child. That is her profile picture. So the fact that I didn't assiduously comb through anything, I just took a proof that that person, his wife, was also friends with Fiona Stanton. And the screenshot of that is just the front page of Facebook, which was already public. So that is, from my opinion, is completely opinionated, as in how he feels that those screenshots were obtained, because that's, I don't know however else you file evidence in court, because I've been in front of him before on multiple occasions, and I'll raise something in court and he will stop me right there and say, where's your affidavit? I don't see the evidence before me. And so you think, oh shit, well, the only time I can raise a concern is by affidavit evidence. Now we know that's not the case, but that was his standard that he had on me. So therefore I'm thinking, if I have to raise an argument, the judge has told me that I have to write it in affidavit. The only way I can prove that he's friends with Fiona Stanton, and there's a quite a substantial familiarity, not just with him, but the wife, is I felt had to be proven because they hadn't disclosed it. So you got to remember, all this had to be proven before they decided to go on and write a general disclosure that they were friends many, many months later. So the fact that he falls back on that and said that I seriously combed through and I, publicly post, like, it's a court case. I haven't distributed his own public profile everywhere, but also he had a public profile. So if you don't want your profile to be seen publicly, manage it.
Exactly. So she chose to file affidavits which included screen capture images of my of my family. Ms. Hendry has based her application in large part on a grievous medical emergency that has afflicted a member of my family, as disclosed on the GoFundMe page. He was in intensive care on life support, unable to move the judge said while the allegations were baseless, the deeply personal nature of the claims made it appropriate to have the case referred to another judge. The simple reality is that it would be difficult for, this is a quote from Judge Jackson, the simple reality is that it would be difficult for any judge to be objective about a person who has conducted themselves in this way in connection with the judge's family circumstances, he said.
So that also
just before you comment about that, I just want to say that in that news article, because I was there on the 9th, and you did talk about Fiona Stanton's relationship, obviously, with Judge Jackson, but also his wife, I just want to note that that is not in this article either. So that's, I think, a big chunk of information that is missing from the public's information that should be available to them.
Also where he states that the argument was largely about this tragic event. That's untrue. Half of my recusal application was unfair procedural bias, and the fact that he has stated in his judgment that argument and that complaint goes nowhere is completely transverse to the facts. So recently, obviously this week, the Human Rights Commission have accepted and progressed a complaint against the ICCPR International Human Rights for equal access to justice for self-representing litigants. And so the Human Rights Commission have accepted the complaint. They have identified potential for breaches of that act and that contravention. And so therefore there is now obviously an investigation and a process that the federal court will now go through in substantiating why self-representing litigants don't have the same access to the same filing systems as represented parties do. And that is an auto-accept system where we have to monitor the filings of represented parties, and then we have to monitor them breaching court orders, and we have to monitor them breaching court rules, and we have to raise objections on top of what we have to do already. And that's purely because the federal court will not allow a self-representing litigant to access the same filing privileges that a represented person does, which is, again, restricting a fair access to justice or equal access to justice for everybody in the court. So I'm not the only self-representing litigant that has suffered through the federal court rejecting documents or delaying filings. We do have a little collective of self-representing litigants that have felt that they've been gaslit for many, many years before the court and wondering why their documents are withheld for so long. And this exposure that we just don't have access to that platform, while you've got officers of the court, which are we've got lawyers that are billing the state hundreds of thousands of dollars that are filing documents at 9:45 at night and having them accepted in 3 minutes, and they're irregular. So you've got affidavits that aren't signed, you've got submissions that aren't signed, you've got court orders that say you can only write 5 pages and they write 13. Documents being filed without leave of the court. So we have a process of self-representing litigants. If we want to file a document that is outside the court orders, we have to write a letter to the court, an extensive letter requesting leave to file a certain document. Then we have to wait to see if that's going to be accepted. And then you sit there with bated breath going, oh, I hope they're going to let my document on. And then they reject it for some weird technicality and your mind is blown because you watch, the solicitor's documents come on the file, which are so poorly, I have to say. Some of them are just astonishingly below standard, and they fly on with not a question asked. So that's progressed. What his statement is that
That's fantastic news. Excuse me, about the Human Rights Commission and that ICCPR, because you explained it to me very briefly before we went into court on the 9th. And again, there was a lot of things that astounded me that day, I have to say, and that was another one to actually realise. And you always think, especially people such as myself and people in the audience who are informed and do their own research about matters, that certainly people who are representing themselves not only in the court but just in society, in daily life, in whatever matter it might be, when you are in a situation essentially where you're working against the machine, you are in a worse off position, if you like. And so just to hear it from you that you have to follow everything by the rules, submit things, not only length but in a timely manner, and all these sorts of conditions that are applied to you when you do things like that. And for the solicitors, the 8 of them that were sitting across the other side of the room against you, paid for by the tax dollar, they just have an automatic acceptance system. And again, that was one of those times.
You notice in the judgment that's never addressed. So the fact that he's very aware, because he has the objections sitting in front of him, and he can see the court file, he can see his own orders, and he can see the multiple breaches of those orders. The fact that is just ignored is so, and that's not addressed. Besides the fact he addresses the fact, Miss Hendry's complaint goes nowhere. Yeah, during my submissions, I quoted, and I think I also filed an affidavit associated, that the restrictions of a self-representing litigant and having to be obviously overly scrutinised and then having to monitor the filings of the other parties and then raise further litigation to object to that. It is so difficult as it is. And then you have to watch, because if you don't object to an affidavit going on and it contains altered evidence or it contains things against the Evidence Act, if you don't stop it there, then that potentially could be used and sworn in. So you're constantly having to monitor. And because they've got auto accept and there's a standard of acceptability with solicitors, the fact that that has just been let go and there is, they're a solicitor, whatever. I mean, the fact that he also said in the judgment, I believe, that Miss Hendry has never had a document not accepted on the court file. I don't know at what court file he's looking at, but there were so many that were rejected. And obviously those kind of situations when you read judgments and I'm like, what? Like, you're what the fuck moment, because you actually have got sitting there the document that was explicitly rejected, and that has to be rewritten and it has to be redone over and over again until it meets a standard where you look at the documents coming in. And obviously I don't know what I'm doing half the time. So you base a lot of the stuff off case precedent, what you can read, what's available in the public file, but also the opposing parties, when they file an affidavit, you think, okay, well, that was accepted. So therefore that's the level that I have to get to. Then you file something at that level and it gets rejected because it's absolutely shit. And you go, oh, hang on a minute. How can that solicitor who is acting for the state, who is billing the state, that affidavit probably just cost the state $5,000, and that's acceptable without any oversight from a judicial officer in the court. So the complaint has been accepted. I think we're all excited about that, because the Human Rights Commission will hopefully locally remedy that for Australia and the federal court, so other self-representing litigants are not exposed moving forward. I mean, all they really have to do is give us auto accept, and then it's up to the judge to monitor the documents being filed. I mean, it's really a simple solution. Give us auto accept, give everyone the same platform, and we wouldn't have a problem.
We've just got a question from Crystal. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. And this is about the recusal. Does this mean that the judge has made an excuse to remove himself rather than admit you had a point?
Do you know what? I hate to. I mean, I can only have an opinion, and I don't know if my argument was strong. It felt strong on the research that I did, and this personal connection that was undisclosed, and I would say intentionally undisclosed, even when explicitly asked before the recusal was raised. And you know, recusing himself for a reason that he thought I was an asshole is just very unusual. It doesn't meet the standard anyway. So yeah, potentially he's wanted to go and he just didn't want to give the credits to a self-representing litigant that she may have had an argument. Potentially. I mean, everyone is going to question how a judge can even recuse himself on an opinion. I mean, how does a judge write a judgment where he already admits that he's apprehendedly biased in that judgment? So the fact that he's written a judgment, he's put a shoe in or put a boot in on the way out, right up the arse of her, so she's got some credibility issues in the public sites, and the media have picked up on it, and he would be, I assume he'd be kicking back and having a frothy over this media frenzy. I don't really know. But the fact that he's gone with the orders that I requested anyway, so that's why it's an accidental recusal on my behalf. Like, I'll refer back to the Steve Bradbury Olympic win of our Australian or New Zealand ice skater, where it was absolutely accidental, but he put the hard yards in to get there.
So, I mean, there's I think two silver linings we've already talked about there. The Olympics moment, if you like, let's call it that, the Olympics moment. The Human Rights Commission, in regards to self-representing people having equal access to justice with procedural fairness. The other interesting thing, I don't know if this is a silver lining, Bronwyn, you can tell me, because this is another article that was printed in relation to the recusal from Lawley. And, this talks about senior officers being named in the article. How significant is this? And is this another silver lining to
it blows my mind. Yeah, so we've been in an argument of suppression for the last 6 months. So lots of public monies have gone into, and the public don't know that obviously yet, but how much money has been spent on trying to have these perpetrators or these alleged respondents' names suppressed from publication. We've already been through it once in 2023. Suppression wasn't withheld. Now they're re-agitating the matter again in 2025, and they want these men's names off the record for publication. And this wonderful judgment that's just come out about the accidental recusal, and the mainstream media have just explicitly named the men in the case. So in regards to the long fight for suppression that the state have made, and that hasn't been heard yet, remember, so that's still flapping around, and I think there's just been so many affidavits filed and so many submissions filed, and that's been 6 months battle where I'm opposing suppression because I believe in open, transparent justice, and they created some extraordinary arguments for supporting why these men's names needed to be kept silent. And the lawyer just went and published them. So the fact that I'll be surprised if the suppression application continues, and I believe that the state have just burnt through another 6 months with taxpayers' money, and these men have been named. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the fact that one of them has 3 other women in the Human Rights Commission for the same allegations, and his name has been protected for this long by the state, and he's still working at the prison, is alarming. So I guess the publication of it will bring out more people. That's all it's going to do, is that I'm sure I am not the only one that had this experience. I'm sure those other 3 women weren't the only people that had that experience. And so the publication will bring people out of the woodwork, because they'll have stories to tell exactly like mine. And we already have had people contact since then that have worked with these people in other prisons and have disclosed the same. So it's actually a silver lining, because you then realise that this is pervasive, and it has been for a period of time. And I'm not sure how the state intended to ever manage this type of behaviour, other than to get rid of the person that complained, punish the person that complained, victimize the person that complained, and keep these fellows on the job.
Yep. People can. It is a silver lining. But people can pause the show on a replay, and you can search for this article if you'd like to read it yourself online. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Bronwyn, absolutely amazing. We first spoke quite a long time ago now, so it was an absolute pleasure to actually meet you in person, and a real honour to have you on Relentless, because you are a relentless human being, and to see you in action, if you like, in court on the 9th of October, I was once again flabbergasted. I would have thought, by listening to you and how you presented on that day, that you are in fact a lawyer, Bronwyn. Once again, I was flabbergasted.
I promise.
Absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really appreciate it. I mean, I know that there's this general consensus for self-representing litigants, and they get such a bad name that they vexatious, and they're there just because they love the battle of litigation. And I think there's a quote from a judge that says you either dismiss them, or there's something else, but the end one is that you make them into a lawyer. And I think by the time this goes on for another 8 years, because that is the natural attrition in regards to how long the state punish you for in litigation under the taxpayer-funded model that they have, is that by the end of it, I probably won't be pacing around on the spot when I do a submission, oral submissions. And it's such a nerve-wracking, horrible place to be. And at the end of it, you just want to cry. Confrontation and conflict is not my MO. I totally dislike it. But the fact that you have to stand up and keep fighting because we have this system and we're against a state government. I mean, there's no other sexual harassment cases in the federal court against the state government, yet it's everywhere. So you have to realise that people the state government are just monsters in general, and litigation is just a way to, misuse taxpayers' money when we've got hospitals that are gross, and we've got, ambulance ramping, and we've got all the other things that are required and should be being addressed where money can be redistributed elsewhere. They are lining the pockets of lawyers and barristers for no reason at all. There is no rhyme or reason that this needs to go ahead. And yeah, they have the right to a defence. Get on with it, file it. For fuck's sake, it's been 2 years. So, and let that defence not be one of a credibility destroyance when it's not relative to the matter. And stay away from the nuts and sluts defence, because all our skills are prepared for it. And denigrating women that come out about sexual assault and sexual harassment. It is absolutely disgusting. And lawyers probably should look at themselves if that is the only defence that they have.
Absolutely.
I really hope. Thank you so much for letting talking, and it's been such a pleasure. Always it is. I'm a huge fan. I love watching the stuff that you.
Thanks. We just for the audience, like you've just said, the matter about the sexual harassment and bullying and intimidation in your position as a former prison officer in Bunbury, Western Australia is not over, and seems to be ongoing for a number of years. And I once again congratulate you about exposing this automatic acceptance and the disadvantage that self-represented people.
They call them lips now, which is a litigant in person. So we get a name, we get a judgment that goes with it, or a bit of a stereotype that we're all
unfortunate acronym.
That I'm a lip. But yeah, the fact that we've kind of joined a bit of a posse together of self-representing litigants. And you know what? I haven't met one yet that is vexatious, that is trying to, that loves the conflict. None of us do. And we're trying our best to do our best. And the fact that we're held to a higher standard than all of the solicitors and law, especially in my case, when they're actually getting paid good money by the state government or the Students' Commission, and the people that are paying them, their client, has no idea what the hell's going on or the standard that they abide by. So they've obviously convinced someone that they can defend the litigation and save the state money while they bill them another $1,000. So do you know what? I'm in for the long run, unless obviously I end up in Melaleuca or some female prison because they decide that I've maybe denigrated somebody or contempt of court or something. Nothing's intentional. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying my best.
Absolutely. And I think perhaps the push for you to take on a pro bono lawyer might have been my conspiracy, allegedly, to avoid having very intelligent and articulate women such as yourself in front of judges in the court system. Perhaps, I don't know, that's just something.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the program. If I had a lawyer, then I definitely wouldn't be speaking, because you would be advised not to. So it is probably the benefit of more people self-representing, is that you can speak about the case. It is what it is. It's not suppressed. And so therefore I speak to it, and I speak to the process, because you go to a mediation and they lock you in a room at federal court and put sticky notes over the cameras. I mean, if you had a lawyer, no one would probably do that to you, but also the fact that would never be exposed. So the fact that the litigation itself is the punishment, but the speaking out, and that's part of it. We should all be able to speak. These cases should be, I reckon, televised. The public should know what's going on behind closed doors, or at the very least, have the option to know rather than them deciding what's public interest and what's not. I think all cases, for the interest of all, should all be publicised, should all be recorded, and people can, form their own opinion about how things are done. And that's just transparency. Unfortunately, that's very difficult in the current political arena, but that's what we're there to do. Until we're not, we will speak the truth.
Well, Donovan, I think your comment sums it up nicely, and to finish the show as well, you're an inspiration, Bronwyn. Well done. Yes, here. I agree, Donovan. Absolutely fantastic. And we obviously will stay in touch, and we will give the audience an update when we can give them an update about anything, Bronwyn. That would be amazing. Anytime you'd like to come back on, you're more than welcome.
I mean, even just to speak to you about your matters too, I'm a big advocate for what you advocate for, and far out, it's cool. And just sometimes some anecdotal conversations about like tearing it apart, like some of these analogies and what you're advocating for. It's aspiring. As a terribly uncomfortable, shy person, and now I've been put in a platform, and I look to women like you, Robyn, how does she get up there and do it? And it is just doing it.
That's right. I'm incredibly shy as well, Bronwyn, believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm so uncomfortably shy and socially awkward that it's terribly anxiety triggering to be in this position. But then, people like you and other truth seekers and, the ones probably that have been shy for a long time, that have done a lot of thinking. And then when it comes out, it's perfect and it's articulate. And I take my hat off to you. For the causes that you also advocate for.
I appreciate that. That's Bronwyn. Thanks, Bronwyn. All right, everybody, let's finish up the show. And once again, thank you so much for joining me tonight, Bronwyn. You're amazing. Thanks, everyone in the audience. Thank you all for your comments. And we'll see you all again soon. Thanks, Bronwyn.
Thanks, Robyn.
Bye, everyone.